Adolf Hitler was a German politician and leader of the Nazi Party who rose to power as Chancellor of Germany in 1933 and later Führer in 1934. He was born in Austria in 1889 and later moved to Germany. As a young man, he tried and failed to gain admission to the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts, and then lived in poverty in Vienna and Munich. Hitler served in the German army during World War I and was decorated for bravery, but also wounded and gassed. After the war, he joined the German Workers' Party, which later became the Nazi Party. He quickly rose through the ranks and became the leader of the party in 1921. Hitler's political ideology was based on extreme nationalism, anti-Semitism, and opposition to communism and liberal democracy. He believed in the superiority of the Aryan race and advocated for the expansion of German territory and the elimination of Jews and other undesirables. In 1933, Hitler became Chancellor of Germany and quickly consolidated his power, suspending civil liberties and establishing a dictatorship. He embarked on a program of militarization and territorial expansion, leading to the annexation of Austria and the invasion of Czechoslovakia. The outbreak of World War II in 1939 brought Germany into conflict with the Allies, and Hitler led Germany in a brutal campaign of conquest in Europe. He oversaw the Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews and other minorities, as well as the deaths of millions of civilians and soldiers in the war. As the war turned against Germany, Hitler's leadership became increasingly erratic and he withdrew from public life. In 1945, with Allied forces closing in on Berlin, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. Hitler's legacy is one of devastation and tragedy, with his ideology and actions leading to the deaths of millions of people and the destruction of much of Europe. His name has become synonymous with evil and his legacy continues to be debated and studied today. Early life. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20, 1889, in Braunau am Inn, Austria. His father, Alois Hitler, was a customs official and his mother, Clara Hitler, was a homemaker. Hitler's childhood was marked by several tragedies, including the deaths of his younger brother and his father. As a young man, Hitler showed little interest in school and was expelled from his first school. He later attended a technical school in Linz, Austria, but dropped out at the age of 16. After the death of his mother, Hitler moved to Vienna, Austria, where he attempted to pursue a career as an artist. He was rejected by the Vienna Academy of Fine Arts twice and struggled to make a living as a painter. Early political career. In 1913, Hitler moved to Munich, Germany, and became involved in German nationalist politics. When World War I broke out in 1914, he volunteered for the German army and served as a messenger on the Western Front. Hitler was injured twice during the war and was awarded the Iron Cross for bravery. After the war, he returned to Munich and joined the German Workers' Party, a small nationalist organization. Hitler quickly rose through the ranks of the party and became its leader in 1921. He renamed the party the National Socialist German Workers' Party, NSDAP, which became known as the Nazi Party. Rise to power. In 1923, Hitler attempted to overthrow the Bavarian government in a failed coup known as the Beer Hall Putsch. He was arrested and sentenced to 5 years in prison, but served only 9 months. While in prison, Hitler wrote his autobiographical manifesto, Mein Kampf, in which he outlined his political beliefs and plans for Germany. After his release, Hitler worked to rebuild the Nazi Party and gain political power. In 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany by President Paul von Hindenburg. He quickly consolidated his power, suspending civil liberties and suppressing political opposition. In 1934, Hindenburg died and Hitler merged the offices of Chancellor and President, becoming the undisputed leader of Germany. Hitler's policies. As Führer of Germany, Hitler oversaw a program of militarization and territorial expansion, aimed at creating a new German empire in Europe. He also implemented policies aimed at purging Germany of what he considered to be undesirables, including Jews, homosexuals, and people with disabilities. In 1935, Hitler introduced the Nuremberg Laws, which stripped German Jews of their citizenship and forbade them from marrying non-Jews. Over the next several years, Hitler oversaw the persecution and eventual extermination of 6 million Jews and millions of other minorities in what became known as the Holocaust. World War II. In 1939, Hitler invaded Poland, triggering the start of World War II. Over the next several years, Germany conquered much of Europe, including France, the Netherlands, and Belgium. As the war turned against Germany, Hitler became increasingly isolated and paranoid. He withdrew from public life and his leadership became increasingly erratic. In 1945, with Allied forces closing in on Berlin, Hitler committed suicide in his bunker. The war ended a few weeks later, with Germany's unconditional surrender to the Allies. Legacy. Hitler's legacy is one of devastation and tragedy, with his ideology and actions leading to the deaths of millions of people and the destruction of much of Europe. His name has become synonymous with evil and his legacy continues to be debated and studied today. Some scholars have argued that Hitler's rise to power was a unique product of historical circumstances, while others see him as a cautionary tale of the dangers of authoritarianism. Hitler's leadership style. Hitler was a charismatic leader who was able to inspire great loyalty among his followers. He used propaganda, public speeches, and rallies to spread his message and create a cult of personality around himself. Hitler's leadership style was also marked by his personal involvement in decision-making and his tendency to micromanage his subordinates. He was known for his explosive temper and his willingness to make decisions based on his own instincts rather than the advice of experts. Hitler's health. Hitler's health deteriorated significantly during his time in power. He suffered from a number of physical and mental ailments, including stomach problems, headaches, and insomnia. There has been much speculation about Hitler's mental health, with some historians suggesting that he may have suffered from a range of disorders, including narcissistic personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. Hitler's death. Hitler committed suicide in his bunker in Berlin on April 30, 1945. He took cyanide and also shot himself in the head. His body was then burned by his aides to prevent it from falling into Allied hands. Hitler's death has been the subject of much speculation and conspiracy theories, with some suggesting that he may have survived the war and lived out his life in hiding. However, the overwhelming consensus among historians is that Hitler did indeed die in the bunker in 1945, and that any claims to the contrary are unfounded. Hitler's legacy. Hitler's legacy is one of infamy and horror. His actions during World War II led to the deaths of millions of people and the destruction of much of Europe. The Holocaust, in particular, remains one of the most shocking and tragic events in human history, and has had a profound impact on the world's understanding of the dangers of hatred and intolerance. Despite the horrors of Hitler's reign, his legacy continues to be debated and studied today. Historians and scholars continue to examine the factors that led to his rise to power, as well as the social and cultural forces that allowed his ideology of hate to take hold in Germany. Hitler's ideology. Hitler's ideology was centered around the concept of Aryan supremacy and the belief in the superiority of the German race. He saw the Jewish people as a threat to this vision, and his policies were aimed at purging Germany of what he saw as impure elements. Hitler's philosophy was deeply rooted in the ideas of social Darwinism and eugenics, which sought to create a master race through selective breeding and the elimination of those deemed unfit. Hitler's rise to power. Hitler rose to power in Germany in the 1930s, using his skills as a public speaker and his ability to tap into the frustrations and anxieties of the German people to gain a following. In 1933, Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany, and he quickly consolidated power, suppressing political opposition and establishing a dictatorship. Hitler's policies. Once in power, Hitler implemented a range of policies aimed at consolidating his power and purging Germany of those he saw as undesirable. This included the persecution of Jewish people and other minority groups, the establishment of concentration camps, and the invasion of neighboring countries. Hitler's policies led to the deaths of millions of people, including 6 million Jewish people who were murdered in the Holocaust. Hitler's downfall. Hitler's downfall came during World War II, when Germany suffered a series of military defeats and was eventually defeated by the Allied powers. Hitler's personal behavior and leadership style were also contributing factors to his downfall, with his tendency to micromanage and his refusal to listen to advice from his generals leading to strategic errors and missed opportunities. In the end, Hitler's vision of a Nazi-dominated Europe was shattered, and he was forced to retreat to his bunker in Berlin, where he ultimately committed suicide. Hitler's impact on the world. Hitler's impact on the world cannot be overstated. His policies and actions led to the deaths of millions of people and forever changed the course of history. His legacy continues to be felt today, with the horrors of the Holocaust serving as a reminder of the dangers of hatred and intolerance. Hitler's rise to power and the atrocities committed by his regime continue to be studied and analyzed by scholars and historians in an effort to understand how such events could have occurred, and to ensure that they are never repeated. Hitler's childhood and early life. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20, 1889, in Braunau am Inn, Austria-Hungary. His father, Alois Hitler, was a customs official, and his mother, Clara Hitler, was a homemaker. Hitler's childhood was marked by frequent moves and a strained relationship with his father. He was a poor student and dropped out of high school at the age of 16. After his mother's death in 1907, Hitler moved to Vienna and attempted to make a living as an artist. However, he was unsuccessful, and he eventually moved to Munich in 1913. Hitler's military service. When World War I broke out in 1914, Hitler volunteered for service in the German army. He was twice wounded in battle and was awarded the Iron Cross for bravery. Hitler's experiences in the war had a profound impact on his worldview, and he emerged from the conflict with a deep hatred for Jews and a conviction that Germany had been betrayed by politicians and intellectuals. Hitler's political career. After the war, Hitler joined the German Workers' Party, which later became the Nazi Party. He quickly rose to prominence within the party and was appointed leader in 1921. Hitler's political message resonated with many Germans who were frustrated with the political and economic instability of the time. He promised to restore Germany to its former glory and to create a society based on the principles of racial purity and Aryan supremacy. Hitler's public speaking skills and charisma were key factors in his rise to power, and he was able to rally large crowds at political rallies and events. Hitler's personal life. Hitler never married and had no children. He was known for his reclusive nature and his obsession with personal hygiene. He had a close relationship with his niece, Jelly Robbel, who lived with him for a time and was believed to be his romantic partner. However, Robbel's death in 1931, which was ruled a suicide, deeply affected Hitler and may have contributed to his increasing paranoia and distrust of others. Hitler's artistic aspirations. Throughout his life, Hitler maintained a deep interest in art, and he aspired to be a painter. Although he was unsuccessful in this pursuit, his experiences in the art world may have influenced his political beliefs, particularly his disdain for modern art and his belief in the importance of classical forms and styles. Hitler's propaganda machine. Hitler recognized the power of propaganda in shaping public opinion, and he employed a vast network of propagandists and media outlets to spread his message. This included the creation of the Ministry of Public Enlightenment and Propaganda, which was led by Joseph Goebbels and was responsible for controlling all forms of media in Germany. Hitler's use of propaganda played a significant role in his rise to power, as it allowed him to control the narrative and shape public opinion in his favor. Hitler's health and drug use. In his later years, Hitler's health began to deteriorate, and he developed a range of health problems, including tremors, digestive issues, and partial blindness. It is widely believed that Hitler was addicted to a range of drugs, including amphetamines, which were administered by his personal physician, Dr. Theodor Morell. Hitler's final days. As Allied forces closed in on Germany in the final days of World War II, Hitler retreated to his bunker in Berlin. He was joined there by a small group of loyal followers, including his mistress, Eva Braun. On April 30, 1945, Hitler and Braun committed suicide in the bunker. Their bodies were later burned and buried in an unmarked grave. Hitler's legacy. Hitler's legacy is one of destruction, hatred, and intolerance. His policies and actions led to the deaths of millions of people, including 6 million Jewish people who were murdered in the Holocaust. The horrors of Hitler's regime continue to be studied and analyzed by scholars and historians in an effort to understand how such events could have occurred and to ensure that they are never repeated. Hitler's name has become synonymous with evil, and his actions have forever changed the course of history. His legacy serves as a reminder of the dangers of hatred, prejudice, and intolerance, and the importance of standing up against such forces. Hitler's ideology and beliefs. Hitler's ideology was rooted in a belief in the supremacy of the Aryan race and the need to purify the German nation. He believed that Jews and other minority groups were responsible for Germany's problems and that they posed a threat to the purity and strength of the German people. Hitler's worldview was also influenced by social Darwinism, which posited that certain races were inherently superior to others, and by a belief in the importance of raw power and military might. Hitler's leadership style. As the leader of Nazi Germany, Hitler exercised total control over all aspects of life in the country. He was known for his autocratic leadership style and his willingness to make decisions based on his own instincts and beliefs, rather than consulting with advisors or experts. Hitler was also highly paranoid and suspicious, and he frequently purged his inner circle of perceived threats and disloyal followers. Hitler's impact on the world. Hitler's actions during World War II had a profound impact on the world. The war resulted in the deaths of millions of people, the displacement of millions more, and the destruction of much of Europe. In addition to the human toll, the war also had significant political and economic repercussions, including the rise of the United States as a global superpower, the formation of the United Nations, and the beginning of the Cold War. Hitler's legacy continues to be felt in many ways today, from the ongoing study of the Holocaust and World War II to the ongoing struggles against racism, anti-Semitism, and other forms of hatred and intolerance. Hitler's rise to power. Hitler rose to power in Germany in the 1930s, following a period of political and economic instability. He capitalized on the public's dissatisfaction with the existing government and the effects of the Great Depression, presenting himself as a charismatic leader who could restore order and prosperity. Through a combination of propaganda, intimidation, and strategic alliances, Hitler was able to consolidate power and establish a dictatorship in Germany. Hitler's military ambitions. From the beginning of his rule, Hitler was focused on expanding Germany's territory and military power. He pursued a policy of Lebensraum, or living space, which called for the conquest of Eastern Europe to provide additional resources and territory for the German people. Hitler's aggressive military actions eventually led to World War II, which began in 1939 with Germany's invasion of Poland. Hitler's persecution of minority groups. Hitler's regime was marked by the persecution of minority groups, particularly Jewish people. He oversaw the implementation of a range of policies designed to isolate and marginalize Jewish people, including the Nuremberg Laws, which stripped Jewish people of their citizenship and other basic rights. This persecution ultimately culminated in the Holocaust, a systematic campaign of genocide in which 6 million Jewish people were murdered in concentration camps and other sites throughout Europe. Hitler's personal life. Despite his public persona as a ruthless dictator, Hitler was known to have a private side. He was an avid reader, particularly of Germanic mythology and history, and was said to have a love of classical music and art. Hitler was also known for his relationships with women, including his longtime mistress, Eva Braun, whom he married shortly before their joint suicide in 1945. However, it is important to note that any information about Hitler's personal life must be viewed in the context of his actions as a leader and the atrocities committed by his regime. Hitler's final days. As Allied forces closed in on Germany in the final months of World War II, Hitler retreated to his underground bunker in Berlin. There, he continued to oversee military operations and issue orders, despite the increasingly dire situation facing the German army. In April 1945, Hitler learned that one of his most trusted advisors, Heinrich Himmler, had attempted to negotiate a peace deal with the Allies without his knowledge. In response, Hitler ordered Himmler's arrest and execution. As the situation in Berlin became more desperate, Hitler became increasingly erratic and despondent. On April 30, 1945, he and Eva Braun committed suicide in the bunker. Hitler's legacy and historical debate. Hitler remains one of the most controversial and studied figures in history. While many view him as a villain responsible for some of the worst atrocities in human history, others continue to be drawn to his ideology and beliefs. There is ongoing debate among historians and scholars about the factors that contributed to Hitler's rise to power, as well as the ways in which his actions shaped the course of world events. Despite this ongoing debate, it is clear that Hitler's regime had a profound impact on the world, leading to the deaths of millions of people and a reshaping of political, economic, and social structures throughout Europe and beyond. Hitler's artistic ambitions. Before he became involved in politics, Hitler had ambitions to become an artist. He applied twice to the Vienna Academy of Art, but was rejected both times. Hitler continued to pursue his artistic interests, however, and during his time in Vienna he produced a number of watercolors and other works. Some of his artwork was later used in Nazi propaganda. Hitler's health and drug use. As he grew older, Hitler's health began to decline. He suffered from a range of physical and mental ailments, including stomach problems, headaches, and insomnia. To treat these ailments, Hitler's doctors prescribed a range of drugs, including methamphetamine, which was used to boost his energy and mood. Hitler's death and legacy. Hitler's death marked the end of one of the most tumultuous and devastating periods in world history. In the years since his death, historians and scholars have continued to study his life and legacy, seeking to understand the factors that led to his rise to power and the atrocities committed by his regime. Despite the horrors of Hitler's regime, his legacy continues to be felt in many ways today. The lessons of the Holocaust and World War II continue to shape our understanding of the dangers of racism, intolerance, and authoritarianism, while ongoing efforts to combat these threats remain a crucial part of the struggle for justice and equality around the world. Hitler's propaganda machine. Hitler was a master of propaganda, using it to manipulate public opinion and consolidate his power. He relied heavily on the use of mass rallies, speeches, and other forms of public spectacle to create a sense of unity and support for his regime. The Nazi regime also controlled the media, using newspapers, radio, and film to spread their message and portray their enemies as dangerous and subhuman. This propaganda machine was a key tool in the Nazis' ability to maintain control over the German population. Hitler's personality. Hitler was known for his intense, charismatic personality, which helped him to inspire loyalty and devotion among his followers. He was also known for his temper, however, and was prone to outbursts of rage and frustration. Hitler's views on race and ethnicity. Hitler believed in the concept of Aryan supremacy, which held that the Germanic people were a superior race that had the right to dominate and control other peoples. He viewed Jewish people, as well as other minority groups, as inferior and dangerous to German society. This belief in racial superiority played a key role in the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime, including the Holocaust. Hitler's impact on Germany. Hitler's reign had a profound impact on Germany, both during and after his time in power. The devastation of World War II left Germany in ruins, with millions dead, cities destroyed, and the economy in shambles. In the years following the war, Germany faced a long process of rebuilding and recovery, both physically and emotionally. The legacy of Hitler's regime and the atrocities committed in his name continue to be felt in Germany and around the world today. Hitler's role in World War II. Hitler's aggressive foreign policy played a key role in the outbreak of World War II. He sought to expand Germany's territory and influence, and believed that war was the only way to achieve this goal. Hitler's military strategy was characterized by lightning-fast attacks, known as blitzkrieg, which were designed to overwhelm his enemies before they could mount an effective defense. This strategy was successful in the early years of the war, but ultimately proved unsustainable as the German army became bogged down in a prolonged conflict on multiple fronts. Hitler's defeat and the end of the war. Hitler's military fortunes began to decline in the latter years of the war, as the tide of battle turned against Germany. The Allied forces made steady gains, invading Italy, France, and ultimately Germany itself. In April 1945, Hitler retreated to his underground bunker in Berlin, where he spent his final days overseeing the military defense of the city. On April 30, 1945, he committed suicide along with his wife, Eva Braun. Hitler's death marked the end of one of the most devastating periods in world history. The war had caused untold suffering and death, leaving millions of people displaced, wounded, or dead. The legacy of Hitler's regime and the atrocities committed in his name continue to be felt in Germany and around the world today. Hitler's ideology. Hitler's ideology, known as Nazism, was characterized by extreme nationalism, racism, and authoritarianism. He believed in the supremacy of the Aryan race and sought to create a society that was racially pure. Under Nazi rule, millions of Jews, as well as other minority groups, were persecuted and killed in what became known as the Holocaust. The regime also oppressed political dissidents, homosexuals, and people with disabilities, among others. Hitler's rise to power. Hitler's rise to power was facilitated by a combination of factors, including economic instability, political turmoil, and a sense of disillusionment among the German people. In the early 1930s, Germany was facing a severe economic crisis, with high unemployment and inflation rates. In this context, Hitler's promises of economic recovery and national pride resonated with many Germans. Hitler and the Nazi Party were also able to capitalize on political divisions and instability in Germany at the time, taking advantage of the weaknesses of the Weimar Republic to gain power. Hitler's impact on the world. Hitler's regime had a profound impact on the world, both during and after his time in power. The devastation of World War II and the atrocities committed by the Nazi regime continue to be felt in Germany and around the world today. In the aftermath of the war, efforts were made to hold accountable those responsible for the crimes committed by the Nazis. This led to the establishment of the Nuremberg trials, which sought to bring Nazi leaders to justice for their role in the Holocaust and other war crimes. The lessons of World War II and the Holocaust continue to shape our understanding of the dangers of racism, intolerance, and authoritarianism, and ongoing efforts to combat these threats remain a crucial part of the struggle for justice and equality around the world. Hitler's personal life. Despite his public image as a charismatic and powerful leader, Hitler was known to have a reclusive and private personal life. He was unmarried and had no children, and his relationships with women were reportedly troubled. Hitler was also known to have been a vegetarian and teetotaler, eschewing alcohol and meat. He was said to be a lover of art, particularly painting and architecture, and was personally involved in the design of many Nazi buildings and monuments. Hitler's legacy. Hitler's legacy continues to be felt in Germany and around the world today, as the lessons of World War II and the Holocaust continue to shape our understanding of the dangers of extremism, intolerance, and authoritarianism. The Nazi regime remains a powerful symbol of hatred and oppression, and efforts to combat the resurgence of fascist and nationalist movements continue to be a priority for many people around the world. At the same time, it is important to acknowledge that the legacy of Hitler and the Nazis is not limited to the crimes they committed. The Holocaust, while undoubtedly one of the most horrific events in human history, is also a testament to the resilience and strength of those who survived, as well as the ongoing efforts to ensure that such atrocities are never repeated. Hitler's personality and leadership style. Hitler's personality and leadership style have been the subject of much analysis and debate among historians and psychologists. Some have described him as a charismatic and skilled orator, able to inspire his followers with his rhetoric and vision for Germany. Others have characterized him as a paranoid and delusional figure, driven by an intense need for power and control. He was known to have a mercurial temperament, and was prone to outbursts of anger and aggression. Despite his flaws and shortcomings as a leader, however, Hitler was able to build a powerful and effective political movement that ultimately succeeded in taking control of Germany and waging a devastating war. Hitler in popular culture. Hitler has been a popular subject in film, literature, and other forms of media, and his image and ideas have been appropriated and parodied in various ways. Some works of fiction, such as Philip K. Dick's The Man in the High Castle, imagine a world in which Hitler and the Nazis emerged victorious in World War II. Other works, such as Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator, use satire and parody to mock Hitler and his regime. While these representations of Hitler and the Nazis can be seen as a way of grappling with the trauma and legacy of the war, they have also been criticized for trivializing or glamorizing a period of history that was marked by unspeakable violence and suffering.